All right, so you've set yourself the goal to go out and run a 5K PB. The good news is we've got an incredible amount of things that we can adjust and adapt and apply, which is going to see some rapid improvements over that 5K time. The really good news is today I'm going to boil down my 25 years in the sport of experience down to 5 or 6 of the key focus points that I think you should apply to your own training that are going to see some rapid improvements in your performance. Now, for a little bit of context, this video is aimed more at the athletes out there who are relatively new to the sport, who haven't been involved for a great deal of time and are looking at an 8 to 12 week block of training to commit to running this 5K PB. Going to be really interested to hear your updates in the comments below on how it's all going. But before we get to that, let's have a look at how we're actually going to set out this 12-week training block. That's right. I said 8 to 12 weeks, but I'm leaning in the name of caution towards 12 weeks or 3 months because 3 months allows us a little more wiggle room. It means we don't have to rush, we don't have to intensify. And as we see some changes taking place slowly throughout this 12-week block, we can gradually increase intensity and some volume without rushing your body to be ready prematurely. And the good news with that is if we can gradually increase the volume and intensity and we're not suffering as a result, naturally, we're going to be able to see more consistent running performance. And as you know, if you've been here before, running has a reputation of rewarding those who are most consistent. Well, we've got the 12-week training block in place, but how many days a week do we actually have to train? The good news is the flexibility here is completely up to you, depending on a couple of factors. First of all, how many days are you currently running? I would say let's not change the amount of days that you're currently running. I love what Gordo Burns says. He says, hey, commit to 10 weeks of doing what you've already been doing in terms of duration, intensity, and volume. And then if your body proves that it can handle that without niggles, injuries, or plateaus, then we can look at adding an extra day. So wherever you're at right now, I would say let's keep it there. Ideally, we want between 3 as a minimum days of running and 6 at a maximum to see these improvements. But the one thing we want to be really focused on is not going from 3 to 6 within this 12-week block. We can do all that later. We've got so many opportunities to go back and attempt this 5K again. But for the first one, we're playing it safe. We want to see you get there in one piece and absolutely rip up this 5K race pace. So 3 to 6 days, wherever you're at right now, let's keep it there. Okay, but 3 to 6 days, that's fairly broad, Tice. What do you mean? What do we actually do within those 3 to 6 days? Now, let's use somewhere in the middle as a little bit of an example. If you want more clarity, let me know your situation in the comments below. I'll offer a little more guidance on how we can structure it. But say you're running 4 days a week. What should that week look like? Well, ideally, we want a long run. We want an intense session. We want a couple of recovery runs. Now, let's start with the long run. Ideally, throughout this 12-week block, we're going to build up from around 30 to 40 minutes up to around 50 to 60 minutes, depending on how you're feeling, how you're absorbing it. Sunday long run is a really easy run. It's a chance just to go out at around zone 2 or conversational pace and just enjoy the sights, working on your aerobic fitness, developing your cardiovascular health. It's a really good, relatively easy day. It's about time on feet. Sure, 60 minutes might seem a little bit too much for someone aiming to run 5K, but it's always nice to know that you can run the distance you're aiming to race at, plus a little bit for psychological reasons. It makes it so much easier to line up. The session that we're going to apply to our week, ideally, if your long run's done on a Sunday, we want to give you a few days break in between that before we really hit the intensity of the session. Maybe a Wednesday or a Thursday would be a good place to put that session in, depending on how you've recovered from the Sunday run. I would say as a session focus, we want to alternate between some longer, slightly slower intervals and also some shorter, faster intervals. When I say longer, slower, I'm talking about around about race pace. When I say shorter, faster, I'm referring to faster than race pace. An idea of what both of these might look like is maybe if you're going out to the track for your faster session, you might want to go out and run 8x400 at slightly faster than your goal 5K race pace with around a 60-second recovery. The idea here is not only are there physiological benefits that take place and allow you to actually go out and run at that pace, mentally, it's so nice to know that the pace that you're aiming to run for your 5K is not going to be the maximum pace that you've run in this 12-week block. So I would say set your 5K goal pace as the marker to hit and then take about 3 to 4 seconds off that pace for each 400 meter rep. The longer, slower session, for lack of a better description that I'm referring to, is not necessarily going to be at 5K pace. You might go out and do 6 by 1K with a 90-second recovery at around 10K pace. If you don't know your 10K pace, don't stress. we're looking at about a 6 out of 10 effort or a 7 out of 10 effort. Or if you're going by heart rate, we're looking at zone 3 to 4 effort. This is a great chance to develop that lactate threshold, to develop your ability to get uncomfortable and stay relaxed as you're going through the motions of an intense session. As I said, I can clarify and offer more suggestions on session ideas in the comments below. You just got to let me know. But what about those other 2 days? Those other 2 days are going to be varying degrees of distance, but always, regardless of what level you're at, they're going to be recovery days. These are days where the goal is not to go out and try and post something super impressive on Strava. These are days to go out and just simply let the legs turn over. A little bit of time on feet, 30 to 60 minutes, depending on what you've been doing. If you're relatively new, start at 30. If 30 minutes is too much currently, don't stress, do 20. If you need a walk, jog, minute on, minute off, you can do that as well. The goal here is to gradually build you up to where you need to be based on where you're currently at. And if that means walking is involved, hey, just absolutely rock it until this becomes an easier run over the course of the 12-week period. One thing that I want to tell you is so often consistency is radically underrated. People think, oh my gosh, I've only got 12 weeks to get ready for this 5K PB. So they'll go out and they think, okay, I did a fast session the other day. Maybe if I just inject another fast session, my progress will be rapid. Truth is, maybe it will. You might be able to go out and do a couple of shorter, faster reps a couple of times a week and seemingly handle it well for a couple of weeks, maybe even for the whole block. But as 6-time Ironman world champ, who we recently had on the Relaxed Running podcast, says, is that doesn't lend itself towards longevity. You might be able to get away with it once, but eventually it's going to lead to niggles and injuries, which means you're not getting faster. If you're out on the sidelines because you're constantly injured, your fitness and your speed is not going to be getting quicker. Let's expand our timeline with the goal of seeing you running faster than you are right now in 12 months' time, in 18 months' time and beyond, not just constantly being on the sideline with little niggles and injuries. Consistency is key in this sport of distance running. Now, another important thing to note is you don't want to be doing anything new on race day. So on your training session days, you want to practice your nutrition, your hydration, and your warm-ups. I would recommend, if you're going out to do a session, at least a 10-minute very slow jog before the session. Stop, do some stretching, maybe some activated stretches, and then do some strides, which is 80 to 100 meters at roughly race pace. You can walk back and do 4 of those in total. About 10 minutes before the race, if you're changing shoes, whack those shoes on, get your Garmin ready, go stand on the start line and get ready to rock and roll. You don't want to be lining up for any sessions or race day with cold legs. It's just a recipe for disaster and also a recipe for poor performance. Obviously, this is a little broad because it's hard to dictate some general 5K advice to every different fitness level, every different competition level, all different talent levels. If you need a little more help with your running structure, with your running planning, feel free to let me know. We've got personal running coaching options for athletes of all levels, all fitness levels. So if you'd like to do that, jump over to Relaxed Running, hit the coaching tab, find out more there. In the meantime, don't forget to check out the Relaxed Running podcast. Enter your questions below. Happy training. I hope you whack this 5K out of the park. I can't wait to see your progress, and I'll see you here again next week.